All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jason Reynolds with the Real Estate Now podcast. And I know you guys have been watching some of our recent podcasts, and we decided to start doing a community edition of this podcast to try and interview local leaders so that way you can get to know folks. And we are lucky today, and we have Burleson Police Chief Billy Cordell with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So I've got a really long bio, and there's way too much here, but... So he jumped in as the Burleson Police Chief in June 2nd of 2014.
That's correct.
So we'd be running up on 4 years, just coming up in a few days.
Mm-hmm.
He got his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Texas Wesleyan.
Yeah.
Master's degree in criminal justice from Tarleton.
Yes.
Master's peace officer certificate from Texas Commission on Law Enforcement.
Yeah.
And then you graduated from the FBI National Academy in 2000.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I just noticed too, you have a life-saving award from the Fort Worth PD in 1989.
Yeah, I had a few things in Fort Worth. I actually started my law enforcement career in Everman as a reserve back in 1983.
Okay.
And then I went to Fort Worth full-time in 85 and retired out of there technically May 31st of 2014, and then took over here the next
Came
day.
right over here.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, Burleson's a great community.
Yeah.
Great citizens, great place to work, awesome team of people.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, to get to know you a little bit, you just kind of mentioned you were in Everman, but how did you end up in Burleson, Texas? What's kind of your quick track of being in law enforcement?
Wow.
Or is there a quick track?
Well, I don't know if 30 years is not necessarily a quick track, but I started as a reserve in Everman and really enjoyed law enforcement, decided to go into it full time.
Okay.
Wanted to go to a large department, so I went to Fort Worth and was fortunate enough to get selected to go.
Okay.
I spent 30 years there working, uniformed, undercover, back to uniform, undercover, and different things. I got to work with in K-9 for 4.5 years.
Okay.
Where I had a German Shepherd that I worked with every single day, which was a lot of fun.
That sounds
Then
real
I
fun.
started promoting up, was a detective for a little while, then
Okay.
I promoted up to supervisor and then lieutenant to captain and retired as a deputy chief.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then are you from the DFW area originally? Were you born here or?
No, I wasn't born here. My dad was in the military, so I was born up in Oklahoma. Don't hold that against me,
Yeah.
but I was born up in Oklahoma, and we moved here. He got reassigned back when it was Carswell Air Force Base.
Okay.
When I was about 2 years old, so I went to Weatherford High School, and we lived there, and then moved to Fort Worth to start my law enforcement career.
Okay. So what inspired you to get in law enforcement? Was it your dad being in the military, or was it some other thing?
That's weird. I don't know that I have a clear path. I was just always kind of fascinated by it, and was around a few officers growing up, and and liked what they did, but really it's more about service and serving a community, and decided that, gosh, I want to do something that I feel like I can make a difference in people's lives, help them when times are tough, and we get called when things aren't
When
going
times
good.
are tough,
So,
yeah.
So it's just kind of evolved from there, and I thought, well, I'll just ease into this as a reserve officer.
Okay.
And really, once I got into it, I thought, man, this is what my life is about. This is my career, and that's what inspired me to go to full time to Fort Worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then, we just left the new Burleson PD headquarters.
Yeah.
And so I remember when I did a Burleson Leadership Academy.
Okay.
And when we held that with y'all, it was at the old headquarters, which is
Yeah.
near downtown. So
Yeah.
when did y'all move? And what's that done for in terms of the department?
Yeah, Fort Worth's no different than Burleson's of the world. Usually you have a place that has been around a long time, and I think they were in this building 30-something years.
Okay.
Over at and it used to be a post office prior to that. And
Really?
they added on to it a few times, and we had people that were in closets making offices out of those, and then and
I
that's
remember
a
how
tough-
small those were.
Yeah, those are some small spaces. So, our elected officials and our city management looked at it and said, we need to expand, and it all starts with them funding these projects.
Right.
So I appreciate everything they did, and this vision began before I got here, but they put everything on hold, and when I got here, we went back through everything with the plans, made a few changes, added a community room to the building, but
Okay.
it was just time to expand, and we've got some really nice spaces in there. We have a community room that our community can come in and reserve. Let's say you have a neighborhood association or
Okay.
a group of folks that we partner with. We do our Citizens Police Academy training in there, and our cops training, our faith-based partnerships, so many other things we do. But the facility itself has given us a lot better space. We've got a training room in there. We partner with a lot of other agencies to do advanced training in there. So it's just the facility is phenomenal, and we just really are blessed to have it.
So can you just, for those that don't know, remind us of where the new headquarters are at?
Yeah, it's on Wilshire. It's very, very visible. Wilshire and Elk, 1161 Southwest Wilshire Boulevard. You really can't miss it. It's got like a 20-something foot
huge
tall
badge
patch,
on the front,
on the front windows, and which obviously is a very visible location. So from that regard too, we have a lot of visitors that pass by it every day and can stop in there and ask questions or drop off prescription drugs. We've got a drug take-back box in there, and a lot of different things to interact with our community.
Yeah, well, it's definitely more visible than the last one.
Absolutely,
so I figured it'd be easier. So then, next door used to be Wells Fargo, but I noticed that that's changed to a municipal court.
Yeah.
Is that open now, or what's?
Yeah, it actually opened January this year, January 1st or 2nd, whenever they came back from the new year.
Okay.
Along about the time we started construction, we caught wind that location, Wells Fargo may be closing that location. The city was able to purchase that, which gave us a pretty good amount of land back behind there.
Okay.
Gave us that whole block, so it really has worked out well. They've got a phenomenal facility over there, and really is much more visible and user friendly for them as well.
Where was that before? Where was
it? Was actually in a lease space out in a county building across from Burleson High School. Where you go get your license plates renewed. That's where it is, or was. Yeah.
Okay, so it's since moved then.
That's correct.
Okay, so then for folks to kind of get to know maybe the size of the department here in town, can you kind of talk about maybe what the size maybe was when you jumped in, and has it grown since in terms of the amount on the force?
Yeah. Well, it was I think it was 62 when I got here, and it's about 65 now, 64, 65 sworn.
Okay.
And then 21 civilian employees. So, and that's the thing. Coming from Fort Worth, obviously a much larger organization. Burleson's of the world and every other law enforcement agency is expected to do the same things that you expect in a large city.
Yeah.
You just have to do it differently, and that was for me, a transition of coming in and learning how we don't have 3 SWAT teams that you can call for something, but we have a great SWAT team, but they are all patrol officers, and then
so they're double duty.
SWAT, they double duty. So everybody there wears a lot of hats.
Okay.
And you get the same thing accomplished. You just do it with less people.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, how many are motorcycle?
We have 4.
4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 4.
Okay. And now I've noticed sometimes I see the SUV driving around that's the Citizens Patrol.
Yes.
Can you kind of, I mean, what do you have to do to be on that? What do they do?
Yeah, you see, and there's 2 different groups of people: Citizens on Patrol, and then the Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association. So CPA is what we refer to them. So you go, if you want to know a lot more about our department, you come in and sign up, and I think it's a 7-week course.
Okay.
And what we do is we have our community resource officers get together and they teach this class, and it really gives you a more in-depth look at our department. Okay. So that you understand some of the things we do. We have people from SWAT come in and talk to you, from our negotiators. We take you over. Mansfield lets us use a simulator they have, so it's a shoot, don't shoot simulator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we go over and we do things like that. They'll do simulated traffic stops and really get to see things more from the eyes of our employees that are out working the street, and talk to them, get to know them better. So that's an in-depth look. If you then the COPS program is our Citizens on Patrol, and that's the SUV that you see. They go through a little extra training. Okay. And can go out and check out that car and drive through neighborhoods. They work with our community resource officers to be able to say, hey, we've got some crime trends happening in this neighborhood or this neighborhood. Can you give us some high visibility over in there? Okay. So they become the eyes and ears of our department and working closely with our officers. And then you see them a lot. All of those groups out at, Hot Sounds of Summer, or all the different events that we have. They're out very visible in their blue shirts and helping people, directing traffic. So, you know, they put in an enormous amount of volunteer hours every year, and it's just a tremendous benefit to our city.
So if anybody wanted to do, say, the academy, the police academy, I'm assuming you have to be a resident of Burleson to apply for that, or how does that?
Yeah, I mean, that's preferable for us in turning the benefit around, but I don't think it's an absolute. If you want to, for the CPA, if you want to come out, and I don't think anybody's going to worry too much about it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is there a cost associated with it? When's the time? When does it usually take place?
It's really a time cost is what it is for them. Usually the classes are on Thursdays. You go through 7 of them. They're probably 2 to 3 hours, depending on what we're doing that night in a class. But, you know, people walk away with a much better appreciation and understanding of what our officers do every day. And you know, they can come right in with their officers and see the different shifts. You know, you can ride on day shift and then turn around and ride on midnight shift, and midnight shift's very different.
See a whole different,
Yeah. So it's, you know, they can learn a lot more about what goes on within the city, talk to our officers about the city. But it's building relationships for us. It's just building great relationships.
So I'm assuming there's information on the Burleson PD website for that?
Yes, yeah, Burleson PD website, and you can go into community groups and look for our Citizens Police Academy or our Citizens on Patrol. Our community resource officers, Tiffany Bauerreisen, coordinates all of that. Does a tremendous job at it. So.
All right. Well, we'll make sure to include a link in the description for folks.
Awesome.
So you can click on it. So talking about Burleson crime, you know, one thing I've always loved, I've always heard the mayor say at, you know, events is our population is increasing, yet our crime is still decreasing.
Yeah.
Is that still accurate?
Last year we had a little bit of increase in our Part 1 crimes. How crime is categorized in 2 different ways. Part 1 is what is considered the more violent crime and thefts and things like that is categorized by the FBI. And then you have Part 2 crime, still categorized by the FBI, but these are things like drugs and fraud, forgery, those type of offenses, a different type of offense. So the more serious ones are your Part 1s. We had an increase in our Part 1 offenses last year, which is the first one we've had in quite a while. This year, right now, it's crime is back down. We're having a decrease, and you know, when you're talking about the mayor, and I listened to his, whether he's talking to the chamber at a different event about the population going up, you should be seeing a compatible rise with the crime on the population increase, but we have not been seeing that, and we've been fortunate. But you know, there's always room to improve on things. There's some things that we have control over, trying to. When I say control, I'm talking about prevention, as opposed to things that you may not have as much control over. So you know, our thefts and our burglary motor vehicles, in particular, I'll talk about burglary motor vehicles, a good example. So you know, you park your car out in front of your house and you leave property in it. There's always someone out looking to take advantage of an opportunity, so they're going to come in there and they're going to bust your window, or in Burleson, it drives me nuts. But they'll leave their car unlocked and leave a laptop, a purse, a gun, all kinds of things in there, and those are things that we can have an impact on, you know. And it's kind of like a fishing. You know, you don't ever go back to a place that you never caught fish. You always go back to where you catch fish. So if they continue to be successful in coming in and burglarizing, they're going to keep coming back. And you know, and that's on us to try to, you know, we put videos out. We're going to look at making another one and try to educate people. While Burleson is certainly still a very, very safe community, we don't want to open that door.
You don't want it to have a reputation. Okay. So then, you know, in terms of talking about crime rate, so like you said, it's not increasing as much as like the population is increasing overall. So what are the things that the police department maybe is doing to stay on top of this? And also with current times, you know, trying to stay on top of culture and items that are happening. What are some new things? You were talking about it before we jumped on.
We have a crime analyst. We hired one. We had our crime analyst retired, so we hired another lady that used to work for Arlington PD. And so she comes in and she evaluates our crime every day. You know, our offenses that come in, she'll evaluate what's going on. We meet every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. We'll meet in the morning. to look at the previous week's crimes.
Okay.
So we're all discussing our crimes, where we're seeing the increases. If you have a trend in burglary motor vehicles or thefts or something, that we can readjust where our resources are. We bring in occasions we may bring people in on overtime that are dedicated to that particular neighborhood that maybe is seeing an increase in burglary motor vehicles. We do that often. We will push that information, like we were talking about earlier, to our cops groups and say, hey, we're seeing some increases over in here, whether it be theft, people leave their garage doors open and people come in and steal a lawnmower or something, and that's part of what cops look for, and they'll get a call to that house and say, hey, your garage door's open, that, and most of the time they just forgot.
Okay.
So we're always looking at our crime and trying to redeploy resources in directions that help us with our crime trends.
Right. Okay. Now, you were also talking about, you were mentioning training that's in addition to what you already are receiving. Can you kind of go into what that development is?
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, roughly, I met with a group of our city leaders, citizens, and said, hey, I've got this vision of starting a Burleson Police Foundation. And threw a pitch out to them. They embraced it wholeheartedly. All 5 of them that I originally met are still on the board, and we've increased that board. And they raised money for mainly 3 goals. One is to support our entire department, officers and civilians, in our awards, our annual awards banquets that honors outstanding service from our staff. Then the second thing is training. And the third thing is equipment over and beyond what you would expect a normal city budget to purchase. So to give you an example, we just put together, for our open house, I put together a board that kind of showed some of the things that they've paid for. So, 896 hours so far they've paid for in training. And this is like de-escalation for mental health issues, autism and law enforcement, violence against women, mental health, peace officers courses, and so many other things that we're training over and beyond what you would expect. Our society, doesn't always have the answers for mental health issues, but we've got plenty of mental health issues.
Right.
You heard it after the Dallas shooting, where then Chief David Brown said, a lot of things, larger societal issues, are laid at the feet of law enforcement because we don't have anybody else to handle them. Right. So we spend an enormous amount of time dealing with people that have challenges in mental health, and there's people that have PhDs and they deal with these issues in a sterile environment. We're going out when somebody's spiraling at a bad time in their life, and we're dealing with it out in a raw environment, meaning they have probably in their house and they have access to weapons and things like that, whether it be a knife or a gun or something. We don't, out of the academy you get 40 hours roughly of mental health training. That's hard to compare to a PhD. So we got to get better at what we're doing and how to deal and de-escalate situations like this, and that's where the foundation comes into play.
Okay, I think that's great. How could people support the foundation?
Well, you can go to the BurlesonPoliceFoundation.org. Okay, is a website. There's a donate button on there. The board of directors, if you live in Burleson and shop in Burleson, you probably recognize a lot of these folks. They're just great business leaders within our community, and they do so much for us in raising money. They got a great understanding of our department and what we're doing. We meet on a monthly basis. The first Tuesday of the month we meet and discuss issues. Hey, the latest thing they purchased us, we just purchased a DJI Matrice 210 drone. That thing was a little over $11,000, and they had raised the funding to be able to purchase that, and that's going to really help our department in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's fun stuff they're doing.
So you mentioned that is it a drone program that you have? So who's that for? And
we're with the purchase of that drone, then we've got to, I just finished applying. It's a lengthy process about a week ago through the FAA. Right, because you have to have a certificate of authorization to be able to fly within, like we have Spinks Airport. Right. To be able to fly commercially like we're doing as a law enforcement agency. Okay. There's a lot of rules on that. So then we'll send our folks through drone pilot school, and they'll go through the testing, the knowledge-based testing on the Part 107 through the FAA. Then we'll start our drone program, where drones so much more popular in law enforcement. They're everywhere,
Yeah.
But in law enforcement, you get somebody that's lost. This has a dual gimbal system, so it has a really nice camera, and it has a FLIR on that can pick up heat signatures. So
oh, wow.
you get
Okay.
somebody that leaves and goes from a stolen vehicle, for example, out into a field hiding. You can put that drone up and locate them very quickly. Lost kids, lost adults too. But also there's software that the technology is phenomenal, and it keeps evolving. So you can go in there, and if you had a homicide out in a field area, for example, you can take that drone up and you can map that scene. I'm being told there's software now for mapping accidents. Let's say you have a fatality accident on I-35, you can take that drone up and map that accident scene,
take
and
a
not
photo
have to
and map
close.
it.
Yeah,
Wow.
not even have to close the freeway down, which is just, that's awesome, because usually when you have a fatality accident, the freeway is going to be closed 2 to 3 hours.
Wow. Now we were talking about this beforehand. So the drone is $11,000 versus what does a helicopter run nowadays?
Well, I mean, depends on what you want to buy, how much you want to spend. Last I checked, there were like $1.5 million for your Bell Jet Ranger.
Yeah.
It may be more than that now, but then you pay
operational
expenses and personnel expenses and things. So there's just not, for a smaller department.
There's no competition.
There's just no way you can afford that.
Yeah.
And but the drone gives you some advantages that you did not have in going and clearing fields and stuff like that. So it's really a neat program. And law enforcement agencies all across the country are getting involved in the drone programs.
Okay. One thing that I saw on Facebook, gosh, it was maybe a year ago, but a lot of people do transactions now on Facebook or Craigslist in terms of exchanging goods. And I thought I read something about the police department parking lot being a safe zone for that.
Yeah, and I mean, as safe can be. We put an exchange zone up there. There's cameras that monitor that front. Obviously,
the whole
that
front
giant
area.
patch. Yeah,
Okay.
the front left side of it in particular. Is where we want you to come in and do your exchanging, and that goes to if you're buying something off of a social media site,
right?
Come in there and exchange it. If they don't want to meet you at the police department, there's a red flag.
There's maybe something wrong, yeah.
Yeah, there's a red flag. Then also, you got the child custody issues, and we have several people who come in there and exchange their children on their days to have the children for the week. And we actually made an arrest off of one, and they came in to do an exchange. And I'm gonna give you a little hint. If you're coming in to exchange your children, number one, don't hit your spouse. Never ever hit your spouse, but don't do it in the police parking lot on camera. It's going to get you arrested.
Yeah. Quick response time, I bet.
Quick response. Absolutely, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so then, but that's under 24/7 surveillance.
Yes.
Okay, and say something like an altercation happened there's somebody in the police department.
Well, I mean, communications is always in there,
right?
And they can get an officer. Not, there's not always someone in the department. They may be in doing reports and things.
Right.
A lot of times they are, but and for the most part, we want them out in the communities and driving around out on our streets and things. But communications is always there.
Is always there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're gonna hop out and support Dwell and get a cup of coffee, and we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, guys, we got our Dwell fix. We're back in the car, and so we're going to continue on for just a few more minutes. But the other question I had written down that's interesting is, I've never known the answer to this. So say somebody's needs help or is in a situation to where they need to call 911, and they call from their cell phone. Is there a way that you guys can tell a location from a cell phone, or is it still, are you reliant upon the person on the other end to give a location?
Yeah, great question. We're still at this point relying upon them giving us the information of where they are. So it's important you always know where you are. We can ping phones, but that's not
doesn't give you an
easy
exact
process. Yeah, it's not an easy process. As you've been able to explain as to where you are. The other thing with cell phones, depending on where you are, as to what tower that hits.
Okay.
So you may be, in the county, and it goes to the county, but you're needing Burleson PD, but that can be transferred. I mean, through technology, that phone number can be transferred back to the appropriate agency depending on where you are. But I mean, it's really, especially if you're out in a rural area, it's
extremely
very important to know where you are. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, is it possible, say you're in a rural area, is it possible to pull up, like, say your Maps app on your phone and give GPS coordinates?
Yeah, you can do that, and our communications can narrow that down.
And pinpoint it.
Yeah, they should be able to do that. Yeah.
Okay. So other question was, do you just know off the top of your head what typical response time is to any type of altercation or anything in the city?
Well, I mean, not off the top of my head can I give you the accurate.
Exact amount.
It depends on the nature of your call as to how it's prioritized, and everything's got a priority to it. So I mean, if you're calling and it's a life-threatening event, you know, somebody's got a gun, they're trying to kick in the door of your house, and you know, or shots are being fired, or a knife, or something like that. That obviously jumps to the top of the list on prioritization, and we get there pretty quick. You know, then it goes down from there. You know, if you had a burglary at your home,
and they're no longer
there, you know, or a burglary motor vehicle in your car, or a theft or something like that, you know, it goes down, and that just makes common sense. We're not going to send somebody to a theft call where there's no suspect on the scene when all of a sudden
you got
a major incident, you know, a shooting or something like that. That's always going to take priority.
Okay. And that's usually when you see with sirens on, right? Mm-hmm. That's if there's a life-threatening type of emergency.
Yeah, and this is a little different from my past. We still respond lights and sirens to major accidents, especially when those are on the freeway, because you look out on 35, speed limit 70.
Oh yeah.
You get somebody coming across a hill there, over Renfro area, that can really compound, and it's very dangerous. So we send people to major accidents that's blocking the roadways. We'll send those code, but we try to we limit the number of times we run with lights and siren, because it's dangerous for officers. It's dangerous for our citizens that panic a lot of times when that happens. So
okay. So then, are there any other things? You'd mentioned that some of the crime we're seeing in the area is unlocked cars and people kind of being in the mentality. And maybe that's the way Burleson used to be, kind of a quiet little town, and it's changing. Are there other things that, when you're talking to the Burleson community, that you would recommend, or just people to stay at watch for?
Yeah, I mean, knowing your surroundings and understanding parking, if you're out at night, parking in a well-lit area, and then paying a little bit of attention to who's maybe in a car, or somebody that they don't look like they have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They come up and ask you, try to make small talk. Those are some red flags. You got to be cautious. You get, the bottom line is, if your stomach makes you feel like this isn't right, then go with that gut feeling, and don't put yourself in a bad position. Educate the kids, because the kids are vulnerable. If they're out driving, they're new, 16 years old, and they're out driving, they're vulnerable. I used to tell my kids, nothing good happens after midnight. Go home.
It's true.
They did a pretty good job of that. I don't know if they, as they got to be older, that didn't have that.
Listen, nothing good happens after 9.
Yeah. Well, when you're my age, nothing good happens after 9. The news maybe, but that's about it. Yeah. But you just got to be, number one, you have to be aware of your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
If you're, use good common sense. If you're a female, don't go out, and that's males too, but especially females, don't go out jogging at night by yourself.
Dark, yeah.
Out in a secluded area. You elevate your risk of being a victim.
Yeah.
And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about domestic violence. We talked about our Part 1 offenses, and domestic violence is such a serious problem in this country.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot more prevalent than gets reported to policing.
Okay.
Yeah. And it starts simple. It may start with verbal abuse, and
right.
then it turns into, physical. And what you see in domestic violence is an escalation. It's a history. You can point this out. The mayor that you're going to be visiting with tomorrow has an enormous amount of statistical data to support, domestic violence, and it escalates. And I'll give you an example. We just passed, Burleson's the first city in the nation to pass a strangulation ordinance.
Really?
And you say, wow, that's kind of weird. Why is that? Well, the ordinance isn't imposing sanctions on the suspect. It's imposing sanctions on our city.
Okay.
So the difference in this is that this ordinance forces our officers, when they're out on the scene and they find that strangulation has occurred, the ordinance kicks in and they have to call the medical team out there, the fire department and ambulance, to that scene. Because what the history is showing, that When you're strangling someone, the lethality of that, I forget the numbers off the top of my head, but your risk of being seriously injured go way, way up. Yeah. Well, what's interesting about police and how we've been trained, and it's a reacclimation of us, is that show me the bruise, show me the abrasion, show me the blood, and that's how I categorize the level of offense against you. Broken arm is a different category than a bloody nose.
Okay.
But what we're finding out with strangulation is that so much damage can be done, some of it, permanent damage, and you don't even leave a mark because it doesn't take a lot to damage the throat area. So we call the medical professionals out there to do an evaluation and make sure we're trying to get help to that victim, because there's been some very serious cases that occurred a few days later off of strangulation.
That wasn't noticed, right?
And that wasn't noticed, so we're trying to bring awareness to the strangulation, and if you're willing to put your hands around someone's throat and strangle them, you are a very dangerous person.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. Last year we had 4 homicides, and Burleson doesn't have many homicides. We had 4 homicides last year. 50% of those, 2 of those were strangulation offenses. So
really, wow.
So we're looking at that going, wow, what can we do to make a difference and try to help protect primarily women, but anybody, trying to protect and educate that, they may start out small and punch you.
Yeah.
And you think, I'm not calling the police, and they get away with it. The suspect gets away with it. Or they get a hand slap, and something like that. And then you come back and they escalate that.
Right.
And we're trying to intervene at that smallest level, try to get help to people and route them to services like, Women's Haven, One Safe Place,
right.
So many other partnerships that can try to help intervene and not let these things escalate, because they often escalate into homicides.
Yeah, okay. One thing that I just thought about as you were talking too, does Burleson have a problem with folks calling 911 for non-emergency calls? Is that an issue?
No, I mean, it's amazing what people define as an emergency in their life.
Yeah.
But
and dispatch kind of determines that.
Yeah, but it really goes into the same place.
Okay.
If you have, our community resource officers are a great resource for our citizens. So the way we have 4 of them. When we're fully staffed, we're not fully staffed in that area right now, but we have 4 of them. They're responsible for geographic areas of the city, north, south, east, and west.
Okay.
Then they have big ticket items, like one of them is over our faith-based partnership, our ministers and officers for Greater Burleson.
Okay.
The rest of them help and support, but this one is the lead on that. And then one's over Citizens Police Academy and cops and so forth and so on. But they are, get to know your CRO, community resource officer, get to know them in your neighborhood, because they can become an invaluable resource for you in trying to find out the non-emergency things.
Okay.
As opposed to even having to call the dispatch. But, 817-426-9903 is our non-emergency number.
Okay.
It's answered by the same folks.
Okay. So you're talking about CROs, community resource officers, so they have different regions that they cover.
Right.
How would somebody maybe look that, whoever that person is, up?
Well, you can do a couple things. You can go to the website, and there's information on the website.
Okay.
And again, go into community resources, and you'll see the information on the CROs and what they do.
Okay.
Really, when we put them together, and they had 2 CROs before I started here, and we expanded that to 4 when I got here, because I know the value that they can bring to a community as a resource, and being able to say, hey, help me with this problem going on, or help me with these issues that we're having in our neighborhood, and that's where they become invaluable. It's not something that you would call 911 on,
right?
But it's something that we need some help, we need some guidance on this, and that's what the CRO is all about. So they're a great resource. If you have community meetings, if you're not connected with us already, and you got neighborhood meetings, community meetings, invite our CROs to those so they can get there and they can talk to you about crime. They can pull stats for your neighborhood and talk specifics with you. Okay,
that's great. And I know it's probably a lot easier for folks who live in like an HOA, because they probably have a connection to a CRO.
Yeah.
Whereas neighborhoods that don't, those are probably going to be the people wanting to look up.
And I don't remember this as statistics quite some time ago, but it talked about, and it was when I was getting my master's degree at Tarleton, it talked about when a neighborhood is organized, when they know their neighbors, and when they have a relationship with the police, their crime rate in that neighborhood is a lot lower.
Goes down.
You know, I mean, that's this is your area, this is where you live, and you want to be connected in with the police department. We have the community room that seats like 35 people.
Okay.
If your HOA wants to come up, reserve this and say, gosh, we want to meet with our CRO, we want to meet with a crime analyst, we want to meet with the chief, we'll set that up, and you come in and we can all sit and talk about your community in particular. We can pull up the stats for your community.
Wow.
What's the driving forces behind that, and show you some of the things that we're trying to do in your area. This is all about serving the public.
Right.
That's what we do. We don't sell widgets.
Yeah.
This is what we do. So we want to partner with our community,
right,
and be able to reach. And that's all different demographics, age groups. Man, these kids, partnering with them, and we're going to set up a video here not too distant future of being stopped by police. That's applicable to anyone, but especially our youth. You're going to get nervous. That police car gets behind you and those lights come on, you're going to be nervous. But there are some things you can do to really de-escalate that situation.
Right.
If it's nighttime and you're reaching under your seat trying to find a wallet and stuff, you're trying to get a wallet for a driver's license or insurance, and what our officer back there sees and perceives is
something else.
You're either hiding dope or you got a gun, or a knife or something, and that automatically puts us on edge. And turning that interior light on, getting your hands up there at 10 o'clock and just leave them on the wheel and let the officer say, hey, and if you have a license to carry, which plenty of people in Burleson have, and you've got your weapon with you before you ever reach anything, let that officer communicate. Hey, I've got a license to carry, my wallet's in my console, and so's my gun.
Yeah.
De-escalate that.
Right.
Because all of a sudden you open up that console and start reaching, there's a gun.
And he sees a gun in there, yeah.
It can put a bad situation, make it worse real quick. So yeah.
Okay. Well, we're running right on 40 minutes, and it'll probably be 30, so that's about time. But based on our conversation, we'll include some links in the podcast.
Great.
So that way, folks that are watching this, if you want access to be able to reach your CRO, look at the Citizens Police Academy, all that will be in the notes. We're right off of Memorial Day, so want to be sure and thank you and your team for your service.
Absolutely.
And what they do for Burleson.
Our vets, and Memorial Day, a lot of people look at it as a holiday. And, but it is such an amazing day when you think about it. Our military, over 1 million people sacrificed their life in protection of this country and protection of our freedoms that we get to enjoy today. And always want to remember our vets and our military. My dad retired out of the Air Force, so got a special place for the military in my heart. But that's a great group of people, and
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time, Chief.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Perfect.